So tell me a bit about one of the ideas that you have put on the platform and tell me why you think people should vote for it, why you're so passionate about it.
Well, I had a few ideas, and I haven't put a large amount of work into putting a project proposal together because I just don't have the energy. Forward, one was about potentially getting into business or franchising like McDonald's and focus heavily on trying to produce income as a business and literally hiring professional people to run those type of businesses if we can see the financial benefit from it. So
Yeah.
that's one element. And McDonald's, I've always been a big fan of McDonald's in terms of its ability to make money consistently all year round, every year. So that's something that I put forward. Another one that I thought was just totally left field was looking at what's called armchair development, and that essentially looks at putting some capital into a property project that returns a 20% per annum return. And I personally have used it as an investment strategy, and it works really well for me. And I've always wondered if instead of using cash to fund mission and lose it at the end of that financial year, what if we put it into something that would turn a profit for us? And obviously, that would depend on the salvos having a large amount of capital that would be willing to not use to fund, business as usual. But when you look at a 5-year return, you double your money. So that's the type of concept. And obviously, we want to try and look at how we use money in a way that helps us build upon and return fruit, year after year after year. It's a biblical principle of how we look at being stewards of our resources and not just using it, but investing it to produce more. In Scripture talks about bearing much fruit, and that as you sow, you'll reap. And even talks in Scripture about how Jesus talks about parables. He uses parables of giving servants coins and then what they would produce with that. And so whether he gave them 5 coins and they turned that into 10 or 12, or they buried it and did nothing with it, and what he was proud of. And I think that, for
Mhm.
us as an organization is going to take us a big shift in understanding and kind of accepting that if we're to move forward in the 21st century, we need to be willing to take risks and build reasonable cases for how we can return a profit from what he's entrusted us with.
Yeah, look, and yeah, love the way you said that. And that's kind of exactly what this mission challenge is about. It's about pushing those boundaries and maybe taking some of those uncomfortable risks that we weren't prepared to before, but maybe that will actually give us huge financial gains to fund missions. So, no, exactly right. Yeah. Why do you think innovation is so important? I mean, you touched on it, but why do you think it's so important for the Salvation Army?
Well, one of the things that I've learned in mission and ministry is the only constant in ministry is change.
Yes.
And besides the fact that we believe in a God who is constant in the midst of change, we, living in the midst of constant change, need to be adaptable and flexible and think ahead and plan ahead, see what we can see coming in the future and to plan for that and plan long term. And I'm talking about our in when we're looking at innovation, how can we look at what is coming ahead and how can we plan for that, whether it's the shifts and changes in society, how do we serve our communities, our towns, our states, our country in a way that is relevant, in a way that is, I guess, we could use the word cutting edge, but what I'm really looking for and what I think innovation is about is a simple idea that has a significant impact.
Mm.
More simpler we can keep it, then the easier it is to deliver. But if it can continue to address things that we either can't see now, or it's going to address things that we think are going to happen in the future, then all of a sudden a very simple concept becomes, a very vital and healthy thing for us to be investing into, because it means we can build momentum with something like that and keep building into it for years to come, knowing that it's going to be relevant for a long time. And I think the key to innovation is looking at how the shifts and changes of our society are happening at the moment and what we might be able to see coming in as the future. One example I'm aware of is I've looked at solar farming for a long time concept, and that's one of the ideas I put up. But the shifts and changes I can see underneath it is that we don't yet have a way to store solar power on a massive scale for our country. So if we can't store it, then we can't make the most of when we make it. It means that we can only use it, generally speaking, in the day. And until solar batteries really decrease by probably a half, like 50% of what it costs to be able to purchase it, maybe even more, it's just not equitable. So, when we look at those sort of things, you go, okay, well, maybe some of those shifts and changes are going to make it hard for us to be able to take on something like solar farming, because literally there's nowhere to store it. And so if we're thinking and trying to be innovative, the concept of building a solar farm, making money is a good concept. To dig out more its own feasibility is the harder work, and checking, obviously, weighing it up of how we can make the most of something like that. So I think, that's kind of where I see innovation. The key is where we don't get stuck 20 years behind because we're not thinking ahead. It's like if we continue to do mission and ministry the way it worked in the 1980s, and we're now in 2021 and we never shifted or changed or adapted. I'm not saying we become like everything else that's happening, but we definitely find a place that we know we can make a significant difference in the midst of all the change and difference.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I can hear the passion in your voice for, this type of innovation work. What would you say to someone, or how would you encourage others in, the Salvation Army that are busy with their, BAU the whole time? How would you encourage them to kind of get involved in this challenge and put their ideas forward?
Well, I would say just putting 5 or 10 minutes aside to write down the concept or idea. Doesn't have to be all, all the answers for it. Someone like me, I don't think of all the answers that's required to make a concept or build something that we're definitely going to move ahead with. I can just try and look for a couple of key areas where I can see that's a win, that's a win, that's a win, all these positives. And I'm like, well, there are obviously some risks and challenges that we'd have to navigate. And you may even get to a point where you get to them, you'll actually, the risks and challenges and effort outweigh the advantages or the potential for change and advantage, or the potential is there, but it's a long shot, and there's so many variables. We find, so we kind of get to that point, you go, oh, well, write it off, no worries, just put on the back burner, who knows. But I think the ability, or just the willingness to dream, what could things be like? How could things be different? And I think as a part of the Salvation Army, we're trying to make a shift and a move towards dreaming big and bold dreams and visions that see us, catalyze, be catalysts for change and shift things that are just stuck. And, at the bigger the organization, it can be a challenge because things do take time to move. But the only way they can move is literally if people start to put some concepts or ideas out there, and not all of them may lift. And even with the concepts that I put up there, if they don't lift, but there's always an opportunity to dream for more. And fortunately, where I am, I can try some of those things. Obviously, I still have to work through my processes, but it's not the national scale. I can try things here that would work for here, and they do work for here. So I would say, if people do have ideas that could have a significant, large scale, impact, then what harm is there putting it forward? If it doesn't move forward, doesn't move forward. But if we don't even put it out there, then it doesn't even have a chance because it never got said or never got dreamed of, never got mentioned. And it's like a seed, ideas. You just plant them, and they can either begin to grow and get momentum, or sometimes they just don't because the timing is off or whatever. But I don't think that should ever stop us from dreaming.
And I think the point you made that's really good is that you don't have to have all the answers. It's about putting the idea out there, and the feasibility study that will come later on. But it's, I can see some positives in this idea. Let's explore it. Let's put it on the platform, see if other people think it's a good idea too. Be vulnerable, and then, see what happens. Absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah. And one other element that I'd probably add is that being a part of the organization, you have a bit more, awareness of how it functions and how it works, and almost the context of, if you were to seed an idea and you weren't a part of the salvos and you didn't know how it operated, you wouldn't have a view or a reasonable view of, just weighing up the potential of those ideas, or why they may or may not work. And obviously we don't want to become kind of pessimistic as if nothing will ever happen, nothing will ever change. It's like, oh, why are we even involved? But if you have a bit of a view, and I guess if you're a part of and seeing how things operate and how they might need to change, then perhaps people's ideas that might just seem normal to someone else might be actually significant,
Yes.
for our organization, because literally the impact is so wide across our organization of how it works.
Yeah, and sometimes it's those smaller things that even, one church or one corpse is actually doing, and then we can actually roll that out at a national scale. So one cause doing something one way, and how can we amplify that and roll it out to scale? Yeah.
Totally.